each day with local news, coupled with Pacifica's worldwide coverage. Only local radio can bring you local news, but only WHAV does.
Catch the wave!
This is Jim Hightower, asking you to listen to my Little Pops of Populism 3 times a day, right here on WHAV. Only local radio at its finest. WHAV brings you this populist feature. So catch the wave, and you'll catch my commentaries. Thank you.
Wave weather!
I'm WHAV meteorologist Gary Best with wave weather. It'll become partly cloudy to clear across the Merrimack Valley through the night. Low temperature in the low 30s. Nice day coming up on Tuesday. Middle and upper 40s with mostly to partly sunny skies. Skies partly cloudy during Tuesday night. Low temperature 26 to 30. And mostly sunny skies on Wednesday. Low to mid 40s, milder on Thursday. This is Gary Best. Your next wave weather is coming up in 30 minutes.
Your soft gold favorites. Catch the wave, WHAV. Open mic.
From the Edwin B. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
Well, don't email Tim Coco because, Tim is not here tonight, obviously, because there's no jacket, there's no shirt, there's no tie. Marc Lemay with you here on the Open Mic, a 50-year staple of democracy here in the Merrimack Valley. Nice to have you along on this Monday night here on WHAV. Tim is a bit under the weather tonight, so pinch hitting. Yours truly, Marc Lemay, until 8:30 here on WHAV. A night full of guests, a night full of conversation. I always like to have guests when I do these things because, quite frankly, they make me look and sound smarter. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, our friend David Goudsward is going to be joining us for a few minutes to talk about a story you can read about on WHAV, the website. WHAV's Man Who Weighed Souls inspires Travel Channel segment. We'll talk to David after that. Coming up after 7 o'clock, Tom Vartabedian. You know him, you love him. 40 years at the Haverhill Gazette? When Tim told me I'd be talking to Mr. Vartabedian, I was a pretty happy camper because Tom's a heck of a guy. Retired journalist with the Haverhill Gazette. We're going to be talking about a serious issue. And we're going to let Tom get into it a little bit regarding his Armenian background and the Armenian Genocide. My understanding from what Tim told me in the background that I've received, I guess it's the 100th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. So we'll be talking about that. And specifically, we're going to talk about that, but I also want to talk about how Tom's involvement in the Armenian community. Coming up at 7:30, old friend Megan Shea going to be joining us in studio to be talking about the proposal by Haverhill's Overdose and Prevention and Education Group, HOPE. She's going to be talking about the proposal that's been in the news today on WHAV's website regarding 200 signatures that were brought to the city clerk's office on Friday opposing the proposed medical marijuana store here in Haverhill. We're going to be talking about that, a big issue, because the host agreement is already in place. And then coming up after 8 o'clock, we'll have open lines, and we'll be talking about a couple things. One that's also in the news that Dana has today, the headline on the website, Mayor recommends doubling downtown parking fees. Big issue. However, there's two sides to every story, as my friends used to say. There's three sides to every story. Theirs, mine, and the truth. We'll get to it coming up after 8 o'clock. And one little pet peeve of mine also came up in the news. We'll be talking about that after 8 o'clock. And the headline from the Boston Herald, surplus symbols. How many state bugs and beans do we need? Recently in New Hampshire, a bunch of kids put together a bill as part of, I guess, a civics class, and that led to it being filed, and it was signed in the House, I believe, that they wanted to make, what was it, the raptor? Let's see, the state bird. Let's see here. New Hampshire lawmakers this month shot down as frivolous a group of fourth graders' effort to name the red-tailed hawk the official state raptor. Well, they got shot down. Pauls got pasted as insensitive bullies. But in a state with an official... Now, ready, New Hampshire? If you're listening to us in New Hampshire, and I know you are, you have... You have a state tree, bird, dog, animal, insect, amphibian, butterfly, saltwater fish, freshwater fish. Whoa, wait a minute, saltwater fish? You guys have like 13 miles of coastline. How do you have a saltwater fish in New Hampshire? Freshwater fish, rock, mineral, gem, and yes, tartan. Apparently, the state legislators in New Hampshire have had enough. And quite frankly, so have I. We'll talk about that coming up after 8 o'clock here on WHAV. Speaking of WHAV... Thank you for watching. WHAV.tv. Also on Haverhill Community Television, Channel 22. You can listen to us online. Maybe you're doing that right now. WHAV.net. AM 1640. On cable television across the Merrimack Valley and at ships at sea. And over Channel 8, Haverhill 22. Methuen, Channel 8 and 22 on Comcast and 32 on Verizon Fios. Hi, Karen. Plastow, you folks with the massive seacoast, where you have a saltwater fish, an official state saltwater fish. Plastow, Channel 17 and 23, Sandown, Channel 17, and Channel 32 from Methuen, heard statewide in communities with Verizon Fios, which means Verizon Fios customers, you won't hear us in Haverhill. Why? Because they're not allowed here. That's why. If you want to call in at any point during the evening, 978-374-1900, and I'd love to get the message board up and running, but yeah, no. We got a full show tonight, so just call in at some point. Bug Nate. Make him do some work, please. This hour of programming on WHAV, this hour of the open mic being brought to you by our friends at Haverhill Bank. Just one bank. Haverhill Bank, of course. And, the funny thing is I actually grasped technology, and I turned the computer on, and golly gee, if it's actually working. We'll get that working in a minute. Oh, by the way, after 8 o'clock, there we go. Oh, good. I can tell you what time it is now. After 8 o'clock, we're giving away the birthday cake, courtesy of our friends at Albee D's second-generation Italian bakery. Yes, I have my cheat sheet, and I'm going to hold it far away from me just for fun. Wide selection of breads, pizzas, cookies, mini pastries, big pastries, pies, desserts, sweetbread, specialty cakes, and more. We'll be giving away the birthday cake. And if you do have a birthday wish, you want to wish someone, give Nate a call. He'll take some notes. He'll pass them along to me, and we'll get them in the running for a delicious birthday cake from Albee D's second-generation Italian bakery, 140 South Main Street in Bradford. So again, David Goudsward is a friend to HAV, and he's got a segment coming up on the Travel Channel, Mysteries at the Museum. Apparently, part of this series is Haverhill's Man Who Weighed Souls. It was the inspiration actually came from a WHAV Haverhill Heritage Series article about that. It was featured, or will be featured, on the Travel Channel next month. The Man Who Weighed Souls will take place during an episode of Mysteries at the Museum, scheduled to air 9 p.m. on April 10th. You can catch that on the Travel Channel on Comcast Channel 54. There's a big local thing to this, and David will explain it as soon as he gives us a buzz. Dr. Duncan McDougall, whose home and medical practice was located on Main Street at the corner of Fountain Street, set out in 1901 to prove scientifically that the human soul does exist. He's obviously never worked in radio. Quote, "It was fascinating to see how an episode of the program comes together," said Goudsward, who's now down in sunny Florida. "And it's nice to be able to give Haverhill some awareness on an international platform." Goudsward said the largest challenge was finding an artifact to serve as the anchor of the segment. His house in Haverhill was torn down to build the Social Security office, where he conducted experiments also in Roxbury is long gone. The Travel Channel did locate a scale similar to the type McDougall used to weigh people before and after death. Again, these people never worked in radio. People who work in radio have no souls. A Fairbanks platform scale was used to determine if any weight loss at the time of death might be attributed to the soul departing the body. The scale was found at the Dayton Historical Depot Museum in Washington. Apparently, Goudsward traveled to South Beach, Florida, last fall to record the segment. The host, Don Wildman, takes viewers across the United States, delving deep into the vaults of the nation's most revered institutions and unearthing wondrous treasures from the nation's past, according to the Travel Channel. So we'll be talking with David in just a few minutes here on HAV about the man who weighed souls, which apparently has a bit of a Haverhill twist to it. We're coming up on 20 minutes in front of 7 o'clock here on HAV. And we could talk a little bit about the proposal that was featured in the news today. The mayor is recommending that we should double our downtown parking fees. According to WHAV's website and news director extraordinaire, Dana Esmel, a proposed revamping of the paid parking system in downtown Haverhill could cost motorists twice as much if passed by the City Council. The Council is expected Tuesday night to place on file for 2 weeks a plan to expand paid parking in downtown, along with fee increases, including a proposed doubling of on-street parking rates from 50 cents to $1 an hour. According to city documents, Haverhill parking consultant John Burke and the Central Business District Parking Commission apparently support a plan. Travel Channel is apparently on 67. Thank you. Well, see, this is what happens when you trust the website, man. You know, you trust a website, and well, it's all yeah. I think it's actually on both, Nate. I think it's on both channels, depending on what box you have and what have you. So I think it's on both, but 54 or 67. Back to the parking situation. The proposal basically going to increase fees. Going to add some technology to the process. Personally, I think we have some pretty good parking situation downtown. My only complaint is that we should make it easier to understand the parking rules and where the parking is taking place and what have you. So let me see if I can call up David Goudsward. I'm a little new at this board thing. I'm going to hit call, right? No. David, are you there?
I hope so.
Oh, thank God. This radio thing is killing me here.
Well, you know, them high-tech fancy things.
Right? So, tell me a little bit about this segment. I will say that the webmaster did not pick the most flattering picture of you to put on the website.
I want to go on record as saying I sent him 4 other pictures he could use instead.
I mean, let's face it. You and I are pretty much the same. You and I pretty much are the same size, girth. We don't belong on camera, for starters, because this whole camera thing bugs me.
It's a really tight shot, so.
Thank
Fortunately,
God.
I think it's from about the shoulders up, so I may be okay.
Okay. Well, how did they track you down to do this segment?
Well, actually, it's a complicated story, and I'll try to make it short and interesting. You may get one or the other, but I'll see what I can do. Back many moons ago, I did a book on the Westford, Massachusetts carving called the West Knight. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, it does.
Okay, good. We're already in good shape. I did a book on that, and they had been filming an episode of Mysteries at the Museum on the Westford Knight. And the fellow who was the person who was interviewed, nice guy, sweetheart, but apparently looked like a deer in the headlights when they filmed it.
Okay. Sort of like me right now.
Well, it's a lot worse when you're in a dark room with backlit, staring at a camera, and that's the only thing you can see.
Well, okay.
But it was so bad that they needed somebody else to just come in with a different voice who wasn't going to look like he was under heavy medication at the time he was talking. Little did they know. So I was able to, actually they did that one on the Gulf Coast at a place called Estero, which is another episode they did with a couple. We live on the inside of a hollow earth. That's a fun episode too. But when I did that, I made the acquaintance of one of the producers, and I've more or less sort of thrown things at her over the years to see if I could get her to do the program. It's not so much that I need more television time. Lord knows, you saw the look. I don't need to do it. But I gave them Hannah Dustin, for instance, and that didn't go anywhere. And I had thrown out that one to them also, because I had just published it in Wavelengths and said, here's an article I just did, and they said, oh, we like it. And it was originally not going to be an episode of Mysteries at the Museum. It was going to be an episode of the sister show, Monumental Mysteries. Same basic premise, but bigger items. And they could not find a monument. They couldn't find. He doesn't even have a gravestone. He's buried in Mount Auburn, and the family doesn't have a stone there, so they couldn't even use that as the anchor to talk about. The house is gone. The hospital's gone. So they finally, Laura, who is the field producer I know, finally said, you know what, this is too good of a story. We can't use it on Monumental Mysteries. I'm going to give it to Mysteries at the Museum. And that's how I ended up sitting there looking like a fool.
Well, you look like a fine fool, David. And what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk about the Dr. Duncan McDougall and more, as our guest right now is David Goudsward, joining us on the phone from Florida. We're going to take a quick time out. Back on the other side with more of the Open Mic right after this.
Open Mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
Listen to The Wave with fewer interruptions, no pop-ups, and a choice of players by tuning directly from www.whav.net.
Catch the wave!
Those political sound bites you hear on the news are, at best, incomplete and could be misleading or even outright lies. This is David Pakman. Take time to delve into the truth by listening to The David Pakman Show, Tuesday through Friday nights at 8 on WHAV. Lack of logic and reason are exposed on The David Pakman Show as newsmakers collapse under cross-examination. Remember, only local radio can bring you this talk opportunity, but only WHAV does.
Today is March 30th. On this day in 1996, the UMass Minutemen ended the winningest season in UMass basketball history. Coached by John Calipari and led by future NBA star Marcus Camby, the Minutemen racked up a 26-game winning streak. Their ability to press opponents with a superior defense helped earn them only their second appearance in the NCAA tournament in 81 years. Ranked number 1 in the nation, UMass beat Georgetown to get to the Final Four. The largest television audience ever for a college basketball game watched the Minutemen lose to the Kentucky Wildcats in the semifinals. Although fans were disappointed, the team brought unprecedented attention to the University of Massachusetts. For more about the UMass Minutemen's 1996 season, go online to massmoments.org. This Massachusetts Moment has been brought to you by the Massachusetts Foundation for the Humanities.
More of your soft gold favorites. WHAV Open Mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
And we're back here on WHAV. David Goudsward joins us on the phone from sunny Florida. Am I correct?
Well, semi-Florida sun, but...
Semi-sunny, semi-Florida? Which, does that put you in, like, North Carolina if it's semi-Florida?
No, semi-Florida weather.
Oh, okay.
According to the tourist agency, of course, we're all warm.
Well, after the winter we've had, anything is better than what we've had, man. I mean...
Yeah, everybody says that to the first hurricane.
Touche. Hey, we're talking about David Goudsward. Mysteries at the Museum, talking about Dr. Duncan McDougall. Tell me a little bit about Dr. McDougall. Did he... I'm guessing, and this is from what I'm reading from the story, he actually believed that the soul weighs something.
Well, it's sort of an interesting theological topic, which obviously means we're not going to go near it tonight. But the Presbyterian Church does not, I don't know if they still do, I really don't know any Presbyterians nowadays, believe that the soul was part of the spiritual essence. But whether the spiritual essence had a physical property was the question that was never established because it was irrelevant. At the time Duncan McDougall was doing these experiments, there was a schism within the Presbyterian Church because the Presbyterian-based universities had started teaching evolution. Now, the problem there was that if evolution was true, man evolved from animals. Animals do not have souls in the Presbyterian dogma. Therefore, the soul had to be a spiritual essence, no substance to it. But if Genesis was a literal account of what happened, the soul would have been constructed at the same time, making it a physical component. Physical substance would be measurable when it departed the body. And that's basically what he was trying to establish. Does the human soul have a sufficient substance that it is measurable? If it does, evolution is incorrect and a literal interpretation of the Bible is appropriate.
So did he ever prove that the soul weighed something?
No. Well, he says he did, but the problem is there are too many variables. He was using a scale that was left over in the hospital from its previous incarnation as the home of a carpet dealer. Mm-hmm. And this gentleman was having bales of silk brought in from the Orient, and he would have them weighed in the cellar. So this was a scale that was designed to weigh things in pounds, if not 100 pounds. Ounces, it was never calibrated for that type of fine work.
And you would think, and I'm not a doctor, but I may play one on television, you would think that when the body dies, there are certain fluids that get released, there's certain gases that get released, not to be gross at the dinner hour.
Well, carefully phrased.
So that would, in essence, make the final body lighter. And if the person happened to eat a large meal before they passed, that could skew the findings.
That's the most polite way I have ever heard it phrased. And
I'm good.
I applaud.
I'm good.
Because we're going to keep our PG rating tonight.
I'm not getting kicked off the air just yet.
He claimed he had allowed for that, that an exhalation would not take up 21 grams or the 0.6 ounce, depending on whether you like metric or not. Mm-hmm, and anything else that might come out of the body at the moment of death was accounted for because of the sheets, rubber sheets, basically.
Okay.
So he would wheel the bed onto the scale, and anything on the bed stayed on the bed during the measurement.
So then that would mean they'd have to weigh the person prior to passing on the bed.
And these were tuberculosis patients, so they were all but comatose to start with. So there was no movement to jostle the scale. He would put them on, he would measure them, and then he would wait for the 2 or 3 hours until they actually died.
Huh. Interesting enough, considering...
but it's actually the way it worked.
Well, considering he did this in 1901, it's pretty astounding science even in 2015. So...
but the problem is there's so many variables he didn't account for. Another variable is that these are metal springs. metal springs expand and contract in temperature change.
Sure.
And there were 8 or 9 people in a closed room for 2 or 3 hours waiting for this guy to die. Things get a little warm. The scale changes its setting because the springs are expanding in the heat.
So how did you get into this, David?
You know, I often ask myself that question. This is actually an outgrowth of a small piece we were doing, an entry in the first book. I'm blanking out on the title of my book, Horror Guide to Massachusetts.
Okay.
It's just such a fun piece that it had to be included.
But how did you get into the whole genre?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, how did you get into the whole, horror kind of, I want to say, macabre type background?
I don't ever remember really not being somewhat peripherally attached to it in some way. I remember one of the earliest books reading would have been at Tilton School, and it was a collection of ghost stories that included, for instance, the Dunwich Horror. I remember that one quite vividly.
Okay.
And, back in the mid-'70s when the Aurora Hobby people released the classic horror movie models, I was all over that.
Now, when I'm going to interrupt, when you say the Horror Guide to Massachusetts, that's your latest book co-written with your brother, when you say horror, do you mean scary or haunted?
I have the most liberal interpretation of the word you could ever possibly want.
Okay. Do tell.
Yeah, I mean, you've got your scary stuff in there. You've got, I guess the question might be what scares you. I've had, for instance, we have Edgar Allan Poe in there. You can't do a horror book without Poe.
Sure. Well, you got Lizzie Borden. I mean, I grew up in Fall River, so you can't. You can't discount.
Lizzie Borden is very popular.
Oh, she's huge. I mean, that's like a gimme field trip in Fall River.
Yeah.
To learn about Lizzie Borden.
We have a listing for where her dogs are buried in the pet cemetery down there.
Yeah.
Don't say we don't pander, because we do.
Been there, done that.
But we included things that are probably not, to the purest sense, horror. Things that are more peripheral.
Such as?
The graveyard of the graveside of the Boston Strangler. Really
that's kind of that's kind of creepy.
Yeah, but things like that start edging out onto the is it or isn't it?
Right.
Stories that are just a little, folk tales, the Dover Devil, the Gloucester Sea Serpent, little cryptozoology. But part of what I like to think the book does is potential horror writers look at it and go, "Oh, I can use that."
Sure.
And give them some inspiration. So there's stories in there such as, I'll give you my favorite in the book, Josh Billings.
Josh Billings.
Josh Billings was a regional comedian, sort of like Mark Twain. In fact, he was more popular than Mark Twain for a number of years.
Okay.
And the reason Mark Twain is still known and Josh Billings isn't is that Mark Twain published.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Josh Billings was not well, so they sent him to the west coast to convalesce. And while he was out there, he died.
Okay.
And he died in a small fishing town. And they had to do something with the body, obviously, and it's before there's embalming. So the process was you took him to the local funeral home, which they had none. So the doctor in town was also the mortician, and they would gut the body, remove the viscera, and fill the body with sawdust to hold the shape, stitch him up, ship him north, or wherever he was going.
Okay.
And that was the plan. So they did this, they put him in the coffin, and the doctor did what he always did to the leftover bits, which is he tossed them out the window into a gully behind his house.
Okay.
A kid is walking along with his dog. The dog finds these tasty bits, and the kid grabs them to use for fishing bait.
Well?
Now, at this point, they suddenly realize they've just thrown out the internal organs of the most popular humorist in America.
Okay.
They make the doctor go out, retrieve all these bits, wrestle them away from the kid and the dog. They put them in a separate tiny coffin, put the little coffin inside the big coffin, and send it out to Lanesboro, Massachusetts, in the Berkshires, where it's buried. And then tried to, nobody knows nothing about this. This never happened. And it stayed completely unknown until it was written about in a little tiny book that nobody's read called Cannery Row by John Steinbeck.
Okay.
And that's how the story became popular. How do you turn down a story like that? It's not technically horror, but
it's kind of, like I said, macabre. Kind of icky.
Yeah, that's the word.
Icky. So you're going to be on the Travel Channel coming up on April 10th, 9 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And the book...
Check your local listings.
Check your local listings. The book, Horror Guide to Massachusetts, where can it be had?
It can be had by going to the WHAV website and
look
going
at that.
in through our little, and that way it helps both the writer and the station.
Helps the writer and the station.
It's in the membership section under Member Shop, and you can pick it up there, and I believe it comes in through Amazon.
All right. David, thanks for joining me on such short notice. Great story.
My pleasure.
The magic of television is so overrated, and you can attest to that now, especially sitting there. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. And they
I did a third episode after this just to prove I am a sucker for punishment, and that one was even worse.
Well, it's hurry up and wait. They got all these lights set up. You sit in there, you sit on different angles, you're looking at different cameras, and you might be there for an hour, and they use 2 minutes of it.
Oh, this is a 15-minute, probably 10 to 15-minute spot, and I was there for 3.5 hours.
Wow.
So,
lucky you.
It's definitely overrated.
Lucky you. David Goudsward, thanks so much for joining us from Florida tonight.
Mark, always a pleasure.
We'll talk to you again soon.
You bet.
And again, thanks to David for helping us out with this, and called him this morning, got in touch with him this morning, and he joined me on the air tonight. Great bit coming up on the Travel Channel on April 10th. Check your local listings, 9 p.m., but check your local listings to where you can find the Travel Channel show. We are coming up on 7 o'clock here on WHAV. We're going to take a time out for news with Dana and FSN, and we're going to come back on the other side with longtime Haverhill journalist Tom Vartabedian coming up after 7 o'clock here on WHAV.
Open mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
It's 7:02.
WHAV Merrimack Valley. WHAV is a not-for-profit service of Public Media of New England, Incorporated. It's heard on 1640 AM, the web, at whav.net, and participating cable television stations.
Here's what's happening in local news. A fiscal 2016 state budget proposal from Representative Brian S. Dempsey of Haverhill, House Ways and Means Committee Chairman, is nearing completion and due out in the middle of April, according to State House News Service. Dempsey is planning to take an estimated $168 million in savings from Governor Charles D. Baker's proposed early retirement program into his budget proposal, even as members of the Ways and Means Committees continue traveling the state to solicit input. The House last week unanimously approved Baker's plan to trim the state payroll by about 4,500 employees before the end of July to save the state as much as $173 million. However, Dempsey downgraded the projection by about $5 million to account for the additional month allowed past the June 30 end of the current fiscal year. Meanwhile, the Senate could vote as early as this week on the governor's early retirement package. Dempsey said another proposal to include more state employees could undercut the promise of budget savings. Also, trial court administrator Harry Spence said any inclusion of the judiciary would impact the trial court, as some 400 court employees could be lost. A Plastown, New Hampshire man is due to be arraigned in court after he was arrested by Haverhill police over the weekend as a fugitive from justice, facing multiple charges under outstanding warrants. Haverhill police report Jason Cheney, 35, of Plastow, was arrested at 7:40 p.m. Friday at the intersection of High and Jackson Streets. Cheney was charged with resisting arrest and being a fugitive from justice on a court warrant. Under 5 outstanding warrants, Cheney is additionally charged with failure to provide DNA, 2 counts of shoplifting, 2 counts of resisting arrest, operating a motor vehicle with a suspended license, possession of a Class A substance with intent to distribute, and violation within a school zone. A 12-year-old male is due to appear in juvenile court after his arrest on an outstanding warrant for assault and battery and armed robbery. According to Haverhill Police, he was taken into custody at 10 a.m. Friday. His identity is being withheld due to his age. A Haverhill man faces drug-related charges in court stemming from search and arrest warrants executed by police with assistance from a regional SWAT unit early Friday in the Lafayette Square area. According to Haverhill Police, Jose Esperanu, 21, of Haverhill, was arrested at 6:09 a.m. Friday at 7 Lafayette Avenue. He is charged with 2 counts of possession of a Class B substance with intent to distribute and 1 count of a violation within a school zone or park. Under an outstanding warrant, he was also charged with operating a motor vehicle without a license and motor vehicle citations. According to police, cocaine and Suboxone were found at the scene. He was arraigned on the charges in Haverhill District Court. A SWAT unit from the Northeast Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council, or NEMLEC, assisted Haverhill Police. The search and arrest operation had temporarily closed Winter Street to traffic at the intersection of Lafayette Square. A WHAV Haverhill Heritage Series article about Haverhill's man who weighed souls was the inspiration for a segment on cable television's Travel Channel next month. WHAV historian David Goudsward tells the story of the man who weighed souls during an episode of Mysteries at the Museum, scheduled to air at 9 p.m. April 10. Locally, the Travel Channel airs on Comcast Channel 54. Dr. Duncan McDougall, whose home and medical practice was located on Main Street at the corner of Fountain Street, set out in 1901 to prove scientifically the human soul does exist. Goudsward said the largest challenge was finding an artifact to serve as the anchor of the segment. The Travel Channel, however, did locate a scale similar to the type McDougall used to weigh people before and after death. The scale was found at the Dayton Historical Depot Museum, Dayton, Washington. For more details, visit WHAV.net. In local high school sports, no scheduled team matches on Monday for either the Haverhill Hillies or the Whittier Tech Wildcats. Remember, WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free. In the Edwin V. Johnson newsroom, this is Dana Esmail.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Rebecca Foster. German prosecutors say that the co-pilot of the Germanwings plane that crashed in the French Alps had exhibited suicidal tendencies before becoming a pilot. Andreas Lubitz is suspected of intentionally crashing the aircraft, killing all 150 people on board. Ira Spitzer reports from Berlin.
Recordings from the plane's voice recorder suggest that Lubitz locked the pilot out of the cockpit while setting the plane on its fatal descent. Now, prosecutors say the 27-year-old had exhibited suicidal tendencies while receiving psychiatric treatment in the years before he became a pilot. They said Lubitz's motive, however, still remains a mystery. Investigators are continuing to interview people who had contact with Lubitz to try and figure out if he had recently experienced some sort of traumatic event. The plane was supposed to travel from Barcelona, Spain to Dusseldorf, Germany. Ira Spitzer, Berlin.
Foreign ministers from 6 world powers are meeting with their Iranian counterpart in Switzerland ahead of Tuesday's deadline for a preliminary nuclear agreement with Iran. They're hoping to agree on the outline of a deal to limit Tehran's nuclear program after almost 18 months of negotiations. Nina Maria Potts reports from Washington.
The foreign ministers from the 7 countries involved arrived in Lausanne on Sunday with the aim of agreeing the political framework of a deal by Tuesday night. A comprehensive agreement would then be due by the 30th of June. The Western powers want to impose limits that would prevent Iran from producing enough fuel to build a nuclear weapon within a year. In exchange, Iran wants UN Security Council sanctions lifted. But officials say there are still disputes over which of those sanctions will be lifted and when, and what kind of nuclear research Tehran would still be allowed to carry out. Iran also raised the stakes on Sunday when its lead negotiator said it was no longer willing to ship its existing nuclear-fueled stockpile outside the country. An apparent change in position, though American officials say the issue is yet to be decided. Nina Maria-Potts, Washington.
One man is dead and another seriously wounded after they prompted an exchange of gunfire by disguising themselves as women and trying to force their car onto the premises of the U.S. National Security Agency in Fort Meade, Maryland, outside of Washington. An FBI spokesperson said they do not believe the incident was related to terrorism. British Prime Minister David Cameron has visited the Queen to formally mark the end of the coalition government formed in 2010. He's informed her Britain's parliament has been dissolved ahead of one of the closest general election races in decades. Mr. Cameron's Conservative Party is neck and neck in the polls with opposition Labour. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Wave weather.
I'm WHAV meteorologist Gary Best with wave weather. It'll become partly cloudy to clear across the Merrimack Valley through the night. Low temperature in the low 30s. Nice day coming up on Tuesday. Middle and upper 40s with mostly to partly sunny skies. Skies partly cloudy during Tuesday night. Low temperature 26 to 30. And mostly sunny skies on Wednesday. Low to mid 40s, milder on Thursday. This is Gary Best. Your next wave weather is coming up in 30 minutes.
Your donations enable WHAV to remain local and independent. Consider giving what you can afford at WHAV.net.
Catch the wave, WHAV, Merrimack Valley. Open mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
And welcome back to the Open Mic, 978-374-1900. I'm not even going to get into the semantics of the show because we have a great guest here, and I'm going to be very upfront with Tom Vartabedian, 40 years at the Haverhill Gazette, heck of a photographer, and Tom, I'm going to have you pull a little closer here. There we go. 40 years at the Haverhill Gazette, heck of a photographer, heck of a reporter. Just a great guy. So when Tim asked me to fill in, he said, I said, you got any guests? And he says, yeah, Tom Vartabedian's coming in. I said, oh, great. We can talk journalism. We can talk newspaper. We can talk radio. We can talk how the internet screwed everything up and all that jazz. And then he said, no, we're gonna be talking about the Armenian Genocide. I said, what are you talking about? I got to do my homework. So I did some homework over the weekend. And first off, welcome, Tom. It's a pleasure to see you. You've always been a gentleman to me. You've always been a heck of a guy. So it's an honor to have you here. And I have to confess, did I miss something in the history class when they talked about the Armenian Genocide?
You probably did, Mark, and it wasn't because you didn't pay attention. Very little is written about the Armenian Genocide, the first genocide of the 20th century. Very little is said about it. The reason why much of it is coming out this year is because it's the 100th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide that took place on April 24th, 1915. The genocide, when all was said and done, extended through 1923. About an 8-year period, interrupted by 2.5 years of independence. Armenia was an independent state from 1918 to about 1920. But all that time, people were being deported, people were being lost. By the time everything was said and done, 1.5 million Armenians were persecuted in the Ottoman Turkish Empire. And another 1 million citizens were driven from their homes into foreign lands, what we call today as a diaspora. That represented 1/2 of the entire population that was residing in Ottoman Turkey at that time. The strange part about all of that is that the Armenian Genocide is not being recognized like it should. Yes, 43 states in the Union ratify and identify the Armenian Genocide. 23 countries also recognize the Armenian Genocide. What country does not recognize the Armenian Genocide, unfortunately, is the greatest country in the world, our own United States of America.
Why is that?
Because of the interest that the United States has in Turkey with their oil bases and their airfields. We cannot get a movie produced in Hollywood on the genocide. We can't get a postage stamp minted by the U.S. postal authorities commemorating man's inhumanity toward man. And here's the strangest thing of all. If you talk to the Turkish government, they will say, what genocide? It's just a figment of your imagination. Nothing took place then. Sure, there was a skirmish. We lost people. They lost people. Let's forget about it. Meanwhile, there is no restitution being made. Today, if you go to Turkey, our churches still lay in ruins after 100 years, and people will not mention the Armenian Genocide in Turkey.
Tom Vartabedian's our guest here on the Open Mic. Longtime Haverhill Gazette reporter, volunteering his services for over 50 years as a columnist and correspondent with the Armenian Weekly, and a large background in the Armenian culture.
Thank you.
And we're going to continue talking with him about the 100th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide coming up here on the Open Mic. We'll be back right after this.
Open Mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
Are you listening to WHAV on cable television? If so, join WHAV in thanking the board, staff, and members of your local public access channel.
Community Spotlight is brought to you by Haverhill Bank. Haverhill Bank is a generous supporter of the area's civic and cultural programs.
That's all it takes is just one bank. Haverhill Bank. Community Spotlight.
The Plastow Police Department is presenting a Parent Information Night on April 8th at 6:30 p.m. in the Pollard School Cafeteria, 120 Main Street in Plastow. Focus of the presentation is on the use and abuse of prescription drugs and the heroin epidemic affecting the area. Also, the event includes a question and answer session for parents. Representatives from Family Medication and Hampstead Hospital are also attending the event to present local resource information. This presentation is open to all parents. For more information, email policedepartment@plastow.com. Someone you know is on WHAV. To submit or read your own nonprofit announcements, click on the Contact tab at whav.net. or email news@whav.net. In the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, this is Sarah Tizo.
WHAV Open Mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
And we're back here on the Open Mic on WHAV. 978-374-1900 is the number. Want to remind you that this hour of programming on the Open Mic being brought to you by our friends over at Haverhill Bank. Just one bank. We are in the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom with Tom Vartabedian. Talk about, I'm like anchored by journalistic history here. And Tom, again, 40 years at the Haverhill Gazette. They don't make them like they used to anymore, do they, Tom?
You know, Mark, I enjoyed every single minute of it. People often ask me where I used to get my story ideas, and after all was written and said and everything, thousands of stories.
Sure.
And you know what? Every one of them was unique. If you asked me to pick a favorite story, I would have to say every single story I wrote, I was always waiting for the next story to come. And that was what my focal point was, to serve the community, do stories on the unsung heroes, the people who don't get enough press. The newspaper world was really a cornucopia of information, a kaleidoscope, however you want to.
Right.
Every day was a new challenge for me. 40 years of active service in one newspaper. I wouldn't have stayed there that long if I didn't think that it filled me with sustenance.
Sure.
And then for the past 10 years since I've been retired, I've often wondered where I had the time to work.
But you still do contribute.
I do.
You do.
I do. I still write my column. It's 50 consecutive years that I've had this almanac column. And I'm still moved by the power of the byline and the power of the written word. And I don't care what the internet and the electronic media is doing. I still enjoy reading my newspaper in the morning.
Nothing wrong with getting your hands dirty.
No.
You're here actually to talk about a little bit more of a serious topic, the Armenian Genocide. It's a 100-year anniversary. And I'm going to ask what might sound like a stupid question, but why did the genocide take place, and what prompted this?
If you go back to the year 1915, April precisely, keep in mind one thing, that Armenia was the first nation in history to adopt Christianity as a state religion. We were proud Christians. We were living on their land. It was their country. We inhabited that particular part of the world. There were about 3 million Armenians living in Ottoman Turkey at that particular time. You can call it greed, you can call it envy. The Turks just absolutely rampaged onto Armenian soil and wiped out anybody they could see that was Armenian. Women, children were not spared. The first to be rounded up and executed were the intellectuals, thinking that if we rid this population of power, of wealth, of prominence, then we will have nipped this population in the bud. Didn't always work that way. A lot of people stood their defense. Thanks to arms from Russia, we were able to withstand something. Henry Morgenthau at that time was the ambassador to Turkey from the United States. He pleaded with the outside world in the United Nations to come to the defense of this tiny little population, to help them out. Nobody came forward to help the Armenian people. There was no arms beyond what Russia was able to give us, and consequently, people were killing themselves and committing suicide and putting their children to death because they did not want them to face the abuse. You know, you can go back to the Jewish Holocaust, you know, and what Hitler did with the Third Reich and so forth. And, you know, Germany today admits its guilt. They pay millions of dollars in reparations to Israel every year. Not that this can atone for the number of lives, the 6 million Jews that were annihilated. But Turkey admits no guilt.
Mm-hmm.
On April 24th this year, at the 100th anniversary, 8 million Armenians throughout the world will be commemorating what this sacred day means to all of us. Okay? But if you go to the neighboring country of Turkey, there'll be little, if anything, said or done or commemorated for the Armenian Genocide.
Let's bring it back home. One of the things that you're doing is you're spreading the word one person at a time, and you're spreading the word to younger generations, so that way they can't say 25 years when they're hosting a talk radio show that they never learned about this, so they won't be me. Simply put, you're going out to classrooms, you're going out to community groups, to basically anybody who wants to hear the message and telling a story. How and why are you doing it?
I feel like I'm an ambassador of goodwill.
Sure. For
my people. In the year 2000, 15 years ago, the State Department of Education passed a law calling for greater genocide education in our public schools.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't enough being said or done about the Armenian Genocide, let alone the Irish Potato Famine, and of course the Jewish Holocaust. Okay, it took us some time to get our act together, but we organized a committee, what we call the Armenian Genocide Education Committee of Merrimack Valley. There's only 3 of us on this committee, and our mission isn't complicated at all, although it may seem that way. We go around to all the schools in Merrimack Valley. We go to colleges, we go to private schools, we go to public schools, spreading the genocide word. Why are we doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll tell you, we're living in a very violent society. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if you look around, every day you see violence in our community. You see violence in our schools and in our neighborhoods. Those are innate forms of terrorism, of genocide, because they escalate. And before you know it, you have a pogrom. All right? There's bullying going on in our schools, whether you want to admit it or not. Kids are living in a state of fear because they don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So we feel that if we get to the schools and talk to the kids and preach the genocide world, maybe we can help prevent some of this violence. Maybe we can educate them, because there's not enough education in our world history textbooks to substantiate the subject of Armenian genocide.
Are you finding, I think this is the case with a lot of culture, that the younger generation doesn't seem to embrace their younger Armenians latching onto this history and making that group more than just 3?
If we don't teach them our history, then genocide will have a tendency to repeat itself. You know what they say, out of sight, out of mind?
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very true. of course, back 2 generations ago, Armenian, the language, was being spoken in the home and being spoken in our community centers. Today, nobody speaks the language anymore. We have political rallies, we have demonstrations, we have commemorations and observances. But let's face it, when I came to Haverhill in 1965, we had 65 genocide survivors living in Merrimack Valley. Good number of them in Haverhill as well. My mother was the last genocide survivor to die in the city of Haverhill. And when she was on her deathbed, she gave me some words of wisdom that, please, don't lose the culture, don't lose the history. Pass it on to our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. Teach the subject. I do that every Sunday. I have my Armenian school classes in my church. I teach whatever language I can, and doing the best I can to perpetuate our heritage and our culture, our roots, because without that we are less than nothing.
Tom Vartabedian is our guest here on the Open Mic. We're going to keep you around for a few more minutes. We're going to take a quick break. It's coming up on 7:30. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back on the other side to wrap things up with noted journalist Tom Vartabedian. Back in just a few here on HAV.
Open Mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
It's 7:31.
This is Phil Christie. When local news breaks, the wave is there. Only local radio can bring you local news, but only WHAV does.
Catch the wave!
The most trusted man in America, news anchor Walter Cronkite, once said, "It is absolutely essential in a democracy to have competition in the media, a lot of competition." That sentiment is one of the driving forces behind WHAV's expanded local news effort. This is News Director Dana Esmel inviting you to listen to my hourly weekday newscasts right here on WHAV. You'll also find the area's most comprehensive local news reporting at WHAV.net on your computer or smartphone. Remember, WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free.
And that's the way it is.
Wave weather!
I'm WHAV meteorologist Gary Best with wave weather. It'll become partly cloudy to clear across the Merrimack Valley through the night. Low temperature in the low 30s. Nice day coming up on Tuesday. Middle and upper 40s with mostly to partly sunny skies. Skies partly cloudy during Tuesday night. Low temperature 26 to 30. And mostly sunny skies on Wednesday. Low to mid 40s, milder on Thursday. This is Gary Best. Your next wave weather is coming up in 30 minutes.
WHAV Open Mic.
From the Edwin B. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
And we're back here on WHAV and the Open Mic. Thanks to all the access stations that air us throughout the week. Quick note of underwriting support being brought to you by this hour, the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council. And we're here with noted journalist and local historian Tom Vartabedian. And Tom, you've got yourself a phone call, so let's head to the phones. Hi, you're on with Tom Vartabedian. Thanks for holding.
Yes, may I please, could I speak to Tom?
Yes, you're speaking to Tom now.
Okay, years ago I got a call from a close friend And he said he had a friend of his that was interested in trying to pass a civil service exam. And he asked me if I would tutor this individual, this Armenian fellow, and I said positively. So he used to come to my house every night, and we'd go over the questions and etc. And he did very well on the exam, and he got appointed. But anyway, the short of the story is that from time to time, he'd invite, because he lived close to the facility where I worked, from time to time, he would invite me over to his mother and father's home, and we would have lunch over there. And the father would tell me the stories. And one particular story he told me was how he escaped from Armenia. He jumped out the second floor of the home that he was in, and he made his way across Europe to France, where he got passage to the United States. But isn't that amazing? The fortitude and the courage, it was wonderful.
He probably ran into my mother while he was in Marseille. Because
Marseille, I think it was either Marseille or Bordeaux.
That's where a lot of the refugees gathered after living in orphanages and after escaping the brutality of 1915.
And
another
thing is,
go ahead.
Of all the countries that got repatriation, could you name them actually?
Well, I'll tell you something. You're talking about countries that recognize the genocide?
Companies that receive, money and funds because of the, for example, the only we know that the Armenians did not receive any repatriation.
No,
you just explained that to me tonight, and now I know why. There wasn't any interest, but. What countries did receive some kind?
I'm going to tell you that Israel, for one.
Israel, for one. How about Ireland? No.
Okay. Other countries like China, other countries like Germany, other countries like Poland. Right now,
and one that I bring to mind, we interned Japanese in the United States, and they receive repatriation.
Absolutely.
And then why not? Then why not Armenians?
I'm going to tell you something right now. The reason why we would want the United States to recognize the truth and recognize the Armenian genocide hinges upon the amount of foreign aid that we can get in this country. We're getting very little in foreign aid. Other countries are getting much more. We're looking for restitution. We're looking for renovations. If you go to Turkey today, you will find that many of our churches and sacred monuments are still in ruins as a result of this genocide, with no admission of guilt, no repatriation, no nothing really. And we owe it to the world to look at this genocide and recognize it so that future genocides could be prevented.
Tom, let me ask you a question. When we talk about repatriation, wouldn't you prefer recognition over repatriation?
Right now, Mark, I would prefer anything.
Sure. Because and I don't want to sound cold when I say this, but money doesn't, you mentioned your mother has passed away. Many of the people who survived that have now passed away. What would the money serve versus recognition, which would actually, I think, justify what you have been fighting for?
I would like to see Turkey open up the gates and let the Armenians into their country without any fear of kickback or anything like that. I'd love to see our churches restored.
Mm-hmm.
We have hundreds and thousands of churches in Turkey, Christian edifices,
mm-hmm.
and none of them really are being used. Maybe one or two. And even then, we have to sacrifice the crucifix, because this is a Muslim country, and they won't recognize the Christian element. I'd love to see employment improve as far as the Armenians are concerned. Many of them are going to Russia now to find jobs. We have a very high unemployment rate in Armenia. Could there be employment in Turkey? Could they relax the borders? I think they can.
Sure.
Yeah.
April 24th is the anniversary date. What are some of the local events taking place, remembrances, what have you?
Right. I got to commend Mayor Jim Ferrantini in the City Hall for opening their doors and flying the Armenian flag during the week of April 24th. We will have our commemoration at the Armenian Church at High Point on the corner of Winter and Main Street. Many of the Armenians locally will be going to Times Square for April 26th. We're all being bused for a major commemoration there. And still, May 7th to 9th, off to Washington, D.C. For a massive gathering. We're expecting about 20,000, and hopefully President Obama will be there to recognize it. We're keeping our fingers crossed, Mark.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so if someone watching, let's say there's a civics teacher, a history teacher that wants to get in touch with you to see if you could come into their classroom.
We've been going around to all the schools in Haverhill. Haverhill High has been very receptive. Northern Essex, we were just there for 2.5 hours Friday. Service clubs, churches, libraries, we've been making visits to all of them. Would love to visit your organization or your school or your gathering, your club, whatever, and talk to you about this 100th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. I can be reached by phone. I'm in the phone book. My number is 978-373-1654. You'll see that in the phone book. People can email me at Tommy, that's Tommy, Vart, V like in victory, A-R-T, Tommy Vart at AOL.com, and we can talk about getting together and at a time that's convenient for everybody.
Tom, it's always a pleasure to talk with you, and we were talking off air, and like I said in the beginning of the show, and when we were talking off air, I said, I get to talk with Tom Vartabedian, and I actually met you many moons ago when you came and did a story about stay-at-home dads.
Yes.
I was a stay-at-home dad with my son Colin, and he was just a little pint of peanuts when we first moved to Haverhill, and well, now he's a junior up at Whittier.
Amazing.
And my daughter is graduating from Suffolk this May with her bachelor's degree in psychology. So 2 of the people that you've touched are doing real well. And it's always a joy. I loved hanging out with Gene and you and Barney over at the paper. And you guys did a hell of a job over there.
Thank you, Mark. You know, I do remember those stories. Not all of them,
It doesn't
but some
surprise
of them.
me that you remember more than you probably care to admit. So, and we still have the copy at home. So, thank you to you and for all the service that you've done over the years, whether it's journalism or the Armenian culture. Tom, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
And it's been a pleasure having you, my friend. We're going to take a quick time out. We're going to come back on the other side with more of the Open Mic here on WHAV right after this.
Open Mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
Still not sure when your favorite features are broadcast? Check out the What's On page at www.whav.net for complete listings.
Smart companies choose the Merrimack Valley. They're attracted by the region's technology and innovation, housing and education, workforce, arts, culture, and recreation, and convenient location and easy access. Learn more and look at profiles of all 24 cities and towns at the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council website at merrimackvalley.info.
Catch the wave!
The most trusted man in America, news anchor Walter Cronkite, once said, "It is absolutely essential in a democracy to have competition in the media, a lot of competition." That sentiment is one of the driving forces behind WHAV's expanded local news effort. This is News Director Dana Esmail inviting you to listen to my hourly weekday newscasts right here on WHAV. You'll also find the area's most comprehensive local news reporting at WHAV.net on your computer or smartphone. Remember, WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free.
And that's the way it is.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, sometimes once is plenty. The best thing about the second best exotic Marigold Hotel is that it's possible to follow the plot and gain an affinity for the characters without ever having viewed its predecessor. Those who have seen the first and enjoyed it will probably like the second offering. However, if you happen to be one of those viewers who falls into the former category and walks away wondering what was the point of having a sequel, you probably won't be alone. The main cast is back, and the sequel picks up where the last movie ended. As the retired group of British expats settle into life in India, some new characters enter the scene, including a woefully underused Richard Gere and the addition of a would-be rival who may jeopardize the aptly named hotel owner Sonny's dreams of business expansion. While a big part of the movie deals with this and Sonny's upcoming nuptials to his beautiful fiancée, who doubles as the hotel's receptionist, the best parts are arguably the subplots, including one between Gere's character and Sonny's mother, and the romantic tension between Evelyn and Douglas, aptly played by Judi Dench and Bill Nighy, respectively. Indeed, one could argue that had one or both of these relationships been the main focus of the second best exotic Marigold Hotel, the result might have been a stronger picture. Still, the finished product is not bad. Parts of it are quite funny and charming, and for those looking for a romantic comedy with mature characters and non-juvenile themes, or who like a film with a fairly predictable ending, you could do worse. However, those expecting a movie on par with a 5-star hotel, best look elsewhere. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Take2_Review.
WHAV Open Mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
And we're back here on the Open Mic. 978-374-1900 is our number. Again, this hour of programming supported by the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council. Coming up after 8 o'clock, we'll be giving away our cake as well. Nate's got a whole bunch of people in there. We're going to pick a name and give away a cake from Albie D's over in Bradford. We're just moving guests in and out tonight. Megan Shea joins me and it's always a pleasure to have Megan because Megan and I have worked together in the past. Full disclosure, we've worked together before, so this is a friendly conversation to all those folks who are part of the Hope group. It's a friendly conversation. Yes, I'm going to ask a few difficult questions, but It's a friendly conversation. It's not all about the media. I'm not that big of a whore. We had to get it out there.
You go.
We're going to put it out there. The main reason why I asked Megan or someone from the group to join me tonight is because the group, and the story is up on the website, and I'm going to read from the story. More than 200 signatures were delivered to the Haverhill City Clerk's office Friday, opposing citing of Healthy Farms' proposed medical marijuana store. Unless it takes up the matter by suspension of the rules, the Haverhill City Council isn't expected to hear pleas from the group at its regular meeting tomorrow night. The item does not appear on the council agenda. Deborah Maddox, wife of John Maddox, Haverhill Public Schools pediatrician, delivered the signatures. At least 3 members of the city's Haverhill Overdose Prevention and Education, HOPE, task force collected the signatures. Petitions are still available to be signed. The undersigned are opposed to the placement of a medical marijuana dispensary in Haverhill, according to the petition. And it goes on to cite health and safety reasons. It also argues the proposed operator for the Haverhill dispensary, Healthy Farms, has already been noted as misrepresenting itself and the community support it allegedly received from local officials. So my first question, Megan, and I'm gonna throw it right out there.
Right.
This seems like an 11th hour plea.
Right.
Why now?
Why now? I think it's been pretty interesting. Actually, Dr. Maddox has been very active with this for the past year plus, since January, February last year when this really started going on. And then the petition drive did come at the last minute because we realized as we were talking with folks, it's like, if we knew now, or if we knew what we know now in 2012, I don't know that we would vote that way. And so, and then there was another comment saying, it's great that it's been voted by the state, and the city did vote by a majority, but they didn't vote to have the dispensary here.
What did we vote for then?
We
Explain
voted for the availability of medical marijuana within the Commonwealth. And we had to legislate. Actually, it was almost like legislation by fire hose. The ballot initiative opened it up, and then DPH had to scurry to create legislation. Ergo, we're still here 2 years later,
right?
Trying to divine what it is that's going on. I mean, the process is rather cumbersome. But it was to provide medical marijuana and to authorize registered marijuana dispensaries to operate within the Commonwealth to provide marijuana to those certified patients that have a certified condition. I didn't bring that statute with me to be able to recite it, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Sure. But now, so it sounds like this is sort of a NIMBY factor. Not in my backyard.
It is.
We don't mind if it happens in Massachusetts, but we just don't want it in Haverhill.
Well, that's our focus right now. I mean, I know, and I hate that you keep tying it with Hope. 4 of us have been attending the Hope meeting, but we're not really Hope members. I don't know who's been officially appointed to Hope, so I want to kind of tease that out a little bit because
there's a group of concerned citizens that basically don't want a medical marijuana dispensary in Haverhill.
Right. And I think the key concern, if you do a little research, I've had the opportunity to do a little research, you find that Haverhill is the only city in Essex County that's had a 4-year steady drumbeat of increase in admissions to substance abuse treatment programs funded by BSAS. We've had a 34% increase in our admissions for substance abuse. And the trends in substance abuse have changed, where it used to be mostly alcohol, now it's mostly heroin. And I think as you hear addicts, individuals speak to you, marijuana is a key component in their trail to that destination. And so trying to limit access to marijuana for the general public is a big deal. Now they say, well, it's medical marijuana, it's supposed to be limited, but there's no 100% guarantee it's not going to be diverted somewhere. And I think that's our key concern. You have children.
Wouldn't that happen if the dispensary were placed in Lawrence or Andover or Worcester or Fall River or Newton? I mean, we've got 351 cities and towns. I can't name them all, But couldn't that same argument be made in 350 other cities and towns?
It could be made in many different areas. But I think we have a critical substance abuse issue, especially with heroin. And we've been identified as one of the leaders in the county. And I think it bears careful consideration before you bring in an added concern.
So what's the connection between heroin and marijuana? Medical marijuana.
Medical marijuana, I think that, of course, even there's a lot of folks that try and connect it because they say medical marijuana reduces the use of heroin, but that's not really significantly proven. I think y'all quoted in that article some studies that were shared, and those 3 studies, if you look at the tail end of the conclusions, none of them are really saying conclusively that there's any kind of relationship or non-relationship. It's too early to tell because medical marijuana and some of the research, some of the data that's available is from 2009. And
study, there's a couple studies that are quoted here, and I'll read them. A study conducted by Wayne State University Medical School in 2013, quote, found that medical marijuana patients consistently reported using marijuana to substitute or wean off prescription narcotic drugs. In the study, all of the interviewed patients reported having reduced their overall drug use, especially the use of opiates, by using medical marijuana.
Right.
According to information provided by Leslie Scott Gordon, attorneys representing 2 attorneys, and Valerie Romano representing Healthy Farms.
So let's talk about that study.
Okay, well, let me read
let's take each of them.
Okay, sure.
How many people do you think were in that study? 28.
Okay.
They were all registered marijuana users. So as a captive audience, that of course is going to give you their bias based on.
But we both know statistics can be manipulated.
They can be
either way.
But it's a small. It's a
very
study.
It does. I will give you that.
Yeah.
It's a very small number.
So in their conclusion, they said obviously they are not an unbiased group.
Right. A study by the American Medical Association, a little bit more reputable, depending on your perspective, found, quote, states that enacted medical cannabis laws had a 24.8% lower mean annual opioid overdose mortality rate compared with states without medical cannabis laws, they said. Finally, a 2012 joint study published by the University of Colorado, bad state for this, but okay, and the Institute for the Study of Labor suggested findings were not consistent with the hypothesis that the legalization of medical marijuana caused an increase in the use of marijuana and other substances among high school students. Here's, and this is my opinion. One of the biggest concerns I have with medical marijuana in Massachusetts is the process has seemed flawed from the beginning.
Absolutely.
It's to use the term, it just seems hanky. Something's not right.
Well, and actually, doing some of the research as we prepare ourselves for it, it was my job to kind of go through the Eagle Tribune. It was really interesting to look at the articles. I mean, I really hadn't paid attention to this the first part of last year. I was working somewhere else. And now I'm retired. I have more time to kind of pay attention to it. And it's like, you had DeLeo saying it's a flawed process throughout the application. You have Deval Patrick running from people not wanting to mention, what's happening, although it didn't sound like he was very happy with the process. And even as you read the application and some of the inconsistencies in there, you realize, I don't know about this. I mean, they had an advisor listed that lost his license in Colorado. He was a medical store owner, and he lost his license in Colorado. And that was supposed to be admitted up front, but they still put him in the application.
Right. And then last year, here in Haverhill, Haverhill City Councilor Bob Scatamacchia said a letter of support he signed was obtained under false pretenses.
Right.
Healthy Farms used the letter as, quote, evidence of local support. He said Fiorentini received a letter from lobbyist James DeJuga and retyped it on to Haverhill City Council letterhead. DeJuga, also a former state senator and current Methuen city councilor, was later fined $2,500 for late disclosure of his drug lobbying work.
Right. And you know what's interesting, just as an aside, it looks like Salem is going to be up and running. Their owner lives in Newburyport, really in the neighborhood.
Right.
Where the owner for our shop lives in Mashpee.
But would that make a
that
difference to
it wouldn't,
you?
It wouldn't really, but I think having somebody local, we're so provincial anyway, it just
Right.
gives us a chance to kind of have that input and that take.
Okay, actually, you know what? We're gonna hold John until after the 8 o'clock hour.
Yep.
He's from one of the. John is one of the folks that are putting this petition, the signatures.
Dr. Maddox is a pediatrician. He's
Okay.
also a medical advisor for Haverhill Public Schools, and
Okay.
we're very fortunate to have him there.
John, if you're on hold, Nate's going to talk to you. We're going to put you on hold till after the 8 o'clock hour. We're going to do news. If you want to call back after the 8 o'clock hour, we'll get you on the air, and we'll keep Megan here as well. We'll tie her down or something, because we're coming up on the top of the hour.
Okay.
So would it make a difference if the person were local, if the ownership were local?
No, probably not. I mean, I'm still against it, but I think it's interesting that they hired a consultant to build relationships instead of coming and doing it themselves.
Okay.
You know, that's kind of my take on it a little bit, because I mean, most of us know that. I mean, I've been in the city almost 20 years, and I'm still not a hilly.
Right.
I have another 50 years to go, and I don't think I'm going to make it.
Well, we can only hope, man. We're coming up on 8 o'clock here on WHAV and also on many community access stations throughout the Merrimack Valley. We're going to take a break. Dana's got local news. We'll have news from FSN. We're going to come back on the other side with a couple of guests talking about the medical marijuana dispensary situation here in Haverhill. Back on the other side with more here on the Open Mic.
Open Mic!
Tim Coco
It's
and
8
the
o'clock.
Open Mic.
WHAV Merrimack Valley. WHAV is a not-for-profit service of Public Media of New England Incorporated. It's heard on 1640 AM, the web, at whav.net, and participating cable television stations.
Here's what's happening in local news. A proposed revamping of the paid parking system in downtown Haverhill could cost motorists as much as double if passed by the Haverhill City Council. The council is expected to debate Tuesday night a proposal to expand paid parking hours in the downtown, along with fee increases, including a proposed doubling of the on-street parking rate from 50 cents to $1 per hour. According to city documents, Haverhill parking consultant John Burke and the Central Business District Parking Commission support a plan to, quote, simplify/standardize the downtown parking system. It calls for ensuring it is self-sustaining by, in addition to a doubled on-street parking rate, increase the off-street parking rate from 50 to 75 cents per hour. Also, the hours for all paid parking areas would be uniformly set between 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. The plan would also consider an option of paid parking on Saturday in the future. Under a proposed city ordinance, other parking fee schedule provisions include increasing various daily maximum rates from the current low of $2 to $6. A $6 maximum would increase to $7.50, and an $8 maximum would rise to $10. Mayor James J. Fiorentini has also recommended the proposed ordinance, placed on file by the council on March 18, be approved. The Haverhill City Council meets at 7 p.m. Tuesday in council chambers at Haverhill City Hall. A Plastown, New Hampshire man is due to be arraigned in court after he was arrested by Haverhill police over the weekend as a fugitive from justice, facing multiple charges under outstanding warrants. Haverhill police report Jason Cheney, 35, of Plastow, was arrested at 7:40 p.m. Friday at the intersection of High and Jackson Streets. Cheney was charged with resisting arrest and being a fugitive from justice on a court warrant. Under 5 outstanding warrants, Cheney is additionally charged with failure to provide DNA, 2 counts of shoplifting, 2 counts of resisting arrest, operating a motor vehicle with a suspended license, possession of a Class A substance with intent to distribute, and violation within a school zone. A 12-year-old male is due to appear in juvenile court after his arrest on an outstanding warrant for assault and battery and armed robbery. According to Haverhill Police, he was taken into custody at 10 a.m. Friday. His identity is being withheld due to his age. In other police news, a Haverhill man is due to be arraigned on drug-related charges in court after his arrest Friday night. Haverhill Police report Jesus Rivera, 32, of Haverhill, was arrested at 11:30 p.m. Friday at 20 Chadwick Street. Rivera was charged with possession of a Class B substance with intent to distribute, conspiracy to violate drug laws, and a school zone violation. Haverhill police are helping spread the word to local motorists. A new state law requires drivers to turn on their headlights when windshield wipers are required, according to online posts. Effective April 7, legislation passed in 2014 will require motorists to turn on their headlights, quote, when the vehicle's windshield wipers are needed, a Massachusetts trial court law library spokesperson said. Under existing state law, headlights should be in use for a half hour before sunrise and sunset or when visibility is under 500 feet. Comments from local residents in response to the online advisory by Haverhill Police range from, quote, a very good law to, quote, common sense, while others had believed the new law was already in effect. More details can be found at WHAV.net. In local high school sports, no scheduled team matches on Monday for either the Haverhill Hillies or the Whittier Tech Wildcats. Remember, WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free. In the Edwin V. Johnson newsroom, this is Dana Esmail.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Rebecca Foster. German prosecutors say that the co-pilot of the Germanwings plane that crashed in the French Alps had exhibited suicidal tendencies before becoming a pilot. Andreas Lubitz is suspected of intentionally crashing the aircraft, killing all 150 people on board. Ira Spitzer reports from Berlin.
Recordings from the plane's voice recorder suggest that Lubitz locked the pilot out of the cockpit while setting the plane on its fatal descent. Now, prosecutors say the 27-year-old had exhibited suicidal tendencies while receiving psychiatric treatment in the years before he became a pilot. They said Lubitz's motive, however, still remains a mystery. Investigators are continuing to interview people who had contact with Lubitz to try and figure out if he had recently experienced some sort of traumatic event. The plane was supposed to travel from Barcelona, Spain to Dusseldorf, Germany. Ira Spitzer, Berlin.
Foreign ministers from 6 world powers are meeting with their Iranian counterpart in Switzerland ahead of Tuesday's deadline for a preliminary nuclear agreement with Iran. They're hoping to agree on the outline of a deal to limit Tehran's nuclear program after almost 18 months of negotiations. Nina Maria Potts reports from Washington.
The foreign ministers from the 7 countries involved arrived in Lausanne on Sunday with the aim of agreeing the political framework of a deal by Tuesday night. A comprehensive agreement would then be due by the 30th of June. The Western powers want to impose limits that would prevent Iran from producing enough fuel to build a nuclear weapon within a year. In exchange, Iran wants UN Security Council sanctions lifted, but officials say there are still disputes over which of those sanctions will be lifted and when, and what kind of nuclear research Tehran would still be allowed to carry out. Iran also raised the stakes on Sunday when its lead negotiator said it was no longer willing to ship its existing nuclear-fueled stockpile outside the country. An apparent change in position, though American officials say the issue is yet to be decided. Nina Maria Potts, Washington.
One man is dead and another seriously wounded after they prompted an exchange of gunfire by disguising themselves as women and trying to force their car onto the premises of the U.S. National Security Agency in Fort Meade, Maryland, outside of Washington. An FBI spokesperson said they do not believe the incident was related to terrorism. British Prime Minister David Cameron has visited the Queen to formally mark the end of the coalition government formed in 2010. He's informed her Britain's parliament has been dissolved ahead of one of the closest general election races in decades. Mr. Cameron's Conservative Party is neck and neck in the polls with opposition Labour. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Wave weather.
I'm WHAV meteorologist Gary Best with wave weather. It'll become partly cloudy to clear across the Merrimack Valley through the night. Low temperature in the low 30s. Nice day coming up on Tuesday. Middle and upper 40s with mostly to partly sunny skies. Skies partly cloudy during Tuesday night. Low temperature 26 to 30. And mostly sunny skies on Wednesday. Low to mid 40s, milder on Thursday. This is Gary Best. Your next wave weather is coming up in 30 minutes.
When local news breaks, the wave is there. Soft Gold, WHAV.
Open Mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
And we're back here on WHAV. It's the Open Mic. Marc Lemay in for Tim Coco tonight. Tim's under the weather. Apparently he is watching or listening. So hope I'm not destroying things here, boss. This hour of WHAV programming supported by our friends over at the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council. Megan Shea joins me in studio. We're talking about the medical marijuana dispensary situation here in Haverhill. And joining me on the phone now, Dr. John Maddox. John, welcome to the Open Mic.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the call.
No, again, thanks for joining me. Nate, our producer, mentioned that we were citing something incorrect. Feel free to clear us up.
Thank you. Well, I think you have to be careful with the source of research. You said correctly that all statistics can be manipulated, but the research studies forwarded to you were by a company that has a vested interest in the outcome.
Yeah, we had mentioned that the first study was released by the lawyers from Healthy Farms. So
right. Well, you asked a really good question. And what is the relationship between medical marijuana and heroin problems that Haverhill is facing? And I think that's what, as a physician and as the school physician charged with the welfare of over 8,000 Haverhill students, that's what keeps me up at night about this dispensary being here. When you ask teenagers, and this is in a research study, when you ask them, this is in a state where medical marijuana is available, where did you get your pot? These are kids in rehab. 74% of them say they got their pot from diverted medical marijuana dispensary stores.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a black market where over 50% of the teens that are using pot are able to access pot diverted from prescription pot. So I believe it's a real risk, and the evidence that starting pot at a young age, starting to smoke marijuana at a young age, before the age of 13 particularly,
mm-hmm.
is a direct gateway to harder drug use, including heroin, in the future. And my last comment is Haverhill already has a big problem. The state average of kids under the age of 13 smoking marijuana regularly is 7%.
Mm-hmm.
And in Haverhill, it's 11%, almost double. I really wish the state, the DPH, would have been smart enough to say, once the voters approved medical marijuana, to say, let's not put the first wave of dispensaries in any town that has a youth rate above the average.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do that, and so here we are. So I think that's my biggest concern.
But with all due respect, Dr. Maddox, when we do, depending on where we put it, if we don't put it in Haverhill, it's going to go somewhere. Are we simply pushing the problem off onto another city?
I think that's a very good question. I really feel like each city should have its say. In Colorado, that happened. The state passed the approval of medical marijuana, but each town had a chance to say, do we want it here? And that really hasn't happened.
Didn't the city of Lawrence say no?
Yes.
So it could have happened.
That's right.
Because, again, we look at Lawrence, and I'm not picking on Lawrence because I work in Lawrence and I happen to like the city. But they said no because they already have a number of societal problems, whether it's poverty, whether it's drug problems, crime problems. And they said, you know what, we don't want this problem.
That's right.
So we could have said no. Could we still say no?
I think that's right. I think that's some of what the timing of the petition is. And I know that from your standpoint, it seems 11th hour, and I can understand that viewpoint. I think that what Megan and I have sensed in the community is there's a lot of people that never got a chance to have their say.
Mm-hmm.
And if this petition is part of the city council realizing that there is a significant percentage of Haverhill residents that have concerns about it being here, maybe this could get put on the November ballot, but maybe there's an opportunity for the Haverhill residents to really get a say of whether it's going to be here or not.
Do you... Okay, I know you don't want it to be here, but one of the concerns, and if you look up on the WHAV website, there's a picture of 3 of our city councilors in front of a map trying to figure out where the zones would be. If it doesn't go as planned, and we end up getting a dispensary in Haverhill, do you have any preference as to where it could or should be?
Well, I'd like to give a huge amount of credit to the city council, because what they were given was a package deal with Healthy Farms and Jim DeJuga, and it was a package deal to be on Hale Street. And with people like Megan and other concerned citizens, we really made a presence at the city council meeting where the zone was decided. And I will forever be indebted to the council for rejecting that Hale Street location and the vulnerable neighborhood that would have fed. So they decided that it goes on Computer Drive up by the Target store. I mean, that Target store parking lot has been cited in the Eagle Trib as a common spot for drug deals, interstate drug deals. I don't think there's a best place for it, with all due respect.
Mm-hmm.
But it's certainly better not being on Hale Street, not in the closest entity to the Acre neighborhood. So I give the council a huge credit for recognizing that.
Dr. Maddox, thanks for taking the time out for joining us. And not all media is bad, by the way.
I agree with you, and I appreciate you taking the call. And you're sitting next to a real hero of mine when it comes to substance abuse and really trying to do. You know, what I find is we're in a hole in Haverhill. We're in a hole with substance abuse, and we need to quit digging. And putting a marijuana dispensary in Haverhill right now is digging the hole deeper.
Dr. John Maddox, thanks for joining us here on HAV.
Thank you very much.
All righty. And Megan, it's always a pleasure having you. Thanks for short notice coming out tonight to talk about this, and definitely keep Tim and Dana in the newsroom and all of us here at HAV in the loop, so to speak. And
we're still looking for signatures.
Still looking for signatures. Where can people sign the papers? Where are they available? Where will they be available?
I'll be glad to drop them off anywhere.
Okay.
They can email me if they want to at mshay@verizon.net.
Okay.
And I've got an electronic version I'll send out, but it's been great. The churches and hairdressers have picked them up, and those are pretty popular places.
Sure.
So it's going to be good. You know, we have a lot of support out there, and it's great. So if folks want to sign the petition, please do.
All righty. Megan, it's always a pleasure, and we miss you.
Yeah, I miss you guys too.
Happy retirement.
It's great.
We're going to take a quick time out here on HAV. It's the Open Mic. We'll be back in just a few.
Open Mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
WHAV is on Facebook. For quick access, visit whav.net and click on the Facebook icon.
Catch the wave!
Suspense, a weekly anthology of notable melodramas from stage and screen, fiction and radio, presented every Monday night to bring you to the edge of your chair, to keep you in Suspense. Listen to the new Suspense with a company of Hollywood actors and surprising guest stars. Monday nights at 10 with encore performances at 1 a.m. right here on WHAV. Remember, only local radio can bring you this feature opportunity, but only WHAV does.
Community Spotlight.
New York Times bestselling author Tom Perrotta answers questions and signs copies of his book, The Leftovers, during Haverhill Public Library's Haverhill Reads finale. It takes place from 7 to 8:45 p.m. on Thursday, April 23rd, in the library's auditorium. Register online at www.haverhillpl.org under Calendar of Events, or call 978-373-1586. Someone you know is on WHAV. To submit or read your own nonprofit announcements, click on the Contact tab at whav.net or email news@whav.net. In the Edwin V. Johnson newsroom, this is Alyssa Torres.
WHAV Open Mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
And we're back here on the Open Mic, 978-374-1900. Got ourselves a couple minutes to go here on WHAV. And, well, you know, the beauty of doing a show like this is I really dig when I have a ton of guests that make me sound smarter. And I want to say that every guest I've had tonight has not only made me sound smarter, but has made me smarter. And that is the beauty of talk radio and local media and everything that Tim Coco has been working on for many, many years. I'm gonna jump from I'm gonna shout from the mountaintops here for a second. But Tim has worked really hard to get us an FM signal here in Haverhill. It's going to happen. 97.9 FM. I suspect, and I don't have anything official because I'm probably talking off the cuff here, but I suspect sometime this summer you'll be able to hear WHAV on your FM radio, and that will make it real radio for all of you folks that don't believe that this is real radio. Well, it is real radio, and it'll happen. So, thanks for Tim for being sick tonight. We got a phone call? Okay, good. I have the illustrious hat in front of me, and does this include all of even tonight, any that called in tonight? And okay, that would be yes. This is like a Karnak moment, isn't it? Someone enjoying food. That's when you're supposed to say someone enjoying food. Yes. Yes, you are correct. Let's see here. Who did you write this? Are you writing a prescription? This is you're going to have to help me out with this. I drew the one that is it for penicillin? Yeah.
Tim's Aunt Priscilla.
Tim's Aunt Priscilla.
Called in by Marcel.
See, it was so now Tim's Aunt Priscilla had Tim pulled this, it would have been rigged. But I reached in just randomly and pulled out Tim's Aunt Priscilla by marriage, apparently. What is this? Is this genealogy 101? I thought we were giving away a cake. Okay, so Tim's Aunt Priscilla, you're going to get a cake from our friends over at Albie D's, second-generation Italian bakery. 140 South Main Street. Wow. Nepotism is alive and well at HAV. So, yeah. We'll apparently, I guess Tim knows where she lives, so we don't need the address. Yeah, okay. Finally, we're going to wrap up because we've only got a couple of minutes left, but we're going to wrap up with a story that I've been saying this for a long time because every once in a while you hear the state is going to have its, the state butter knife, the official state hubcap, the official state bird, the dog, whatever. So, how about whoopie pies as the official state dessert? Apparently, one of the things that this all comes out of New Hampshire, actually. It started up in New Hampshire. A bunch of kids got together and wanted to, a bunch of fourth graders, to name the red-tailed hawk the official state raptor. It didn't happen. The Senate up there shot it down. You know, maybe people argue lawmakers should spend better time tackling things like budgets, taxes, and education. State Representative John Burt is known for hosting an annual hot dog day on the State House lawn to raise money for animal advocacy groups. During the hawk debate, he argued lawmakers had more important work to do and poked fun at himself in the process, declaring that soon the state would name an official hot dog. Quote, it was to get a point across that if we had the bird bills, we'd have to stop these and tell the teacher, I know you want to mean well, and you want to encourage your kids, and you should, but you shouldn't be taking up our precious time, said Burt. New Hampshire's list of official tokens is far from the lengthiest. Oklahoma has 45 state symbols, including 5 separate state foods. Yes, 5 separate state foods, such as the state bean, the black-eyed pea, 6 separate meals, including chicken fried steak. Well, by golly, I'm heading to Oklahoma. There were more than 70 pieces of legislation nationwide this year, many brought by students engaged in a civic lesson to name everything from the official Alaska state hostess, Miss Alaska, to the official legendary creature in Wyoming, the jackalope. Alas, the jackalope passed the House but died in the Senate. Massachusetts has 9 bills to name symbols this year, including the official Tai Chi form. Really? Whose idea was it anyway? Well, according to State Symbols USA, a national garland of flowers created for the 1893 Chicago's World's Fair inspired states to adopt official floral emblems and kicked off the trend. Controversy over the horrifics isn't new, though. Witness the turbulent trip taken by the ladybug back in 1977. After students at New Hampshire's Broken Ground Grammar School introduced it in the 400-seat House of Representatives, the measure to name the official insect was referred, naturally, to the Committee on Claims, Military, and Veterans Affairs, which determined it was important enough to create a state insect selection board. After a couple of parliamentary procedures to stall or kill the bill, opponents were shouted down. The ladybug ascended into history. You know what? Do we really want our legislators dealing with this stuff? Apparently, by the way, Massachusetts lawmakers, one of the things they're considering this year, considering the sandwich, the Fluffernutter sandwich, as the official state sandwich. And New Hampshire, as I said earlier, New Hampshire has, these are the official things in New Hampshire. They have an official tree, a bird, a dog, an insect, amphibian, butterfly, saltwater fish, which, again, New Hampshire has like 13 miles of coastline. How can they claim a fish, a saltwater fish? They also have a freshwater fish, a rock, a mineral, a gem, and yes, tartan.
Well,
really?
Mark, I don't know about that, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we should create a bill naming WHAV the official state radio station. What do you think of that?
And this is why we have problems in the legislature. Hey, we're coming up on 8:30, folks. It has been a pleasure. Did not get to raising parking fees. However, you know what? I think it's the cost of doing business, folks. You go downtown, you drop in $50, $60 for a meal. wants an extra few bucks to park and park conveniently. You want to see a good example of parking? Go up to Manchester, New Hampshire. Outstanding downtown. And you know what? You got to pay for parking, folks. And they've got a downtown with a gajillion restaurants and lots of stuff to do. And you know what? People still pay to park. It's a wonderful thing. We're coming up on 8:30. It has been a pleasure being with you tonight. Thank you to all of our guests. Tim, hope you're feeling better. I promise you, viewers and listeners, he will be back next week. Nate in the big room over there behind the goldfish bowl. Thank you so much for doing what you do, brother. And we will see you next time, whenever that is, God willing. Keep your hands on the ground and keep kicking for the stars. We'll see you then.
Open mic!
Join Tim Coco live on the Open Mic again next Monday night at 6:30. The opinions expressed on the Open Mic Show are not necessarily those of WHAV, its underwriters, or affiliated stations. The Open Mic Show came to you from the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom.
It's 8:30. Phil Christie here. Are you listening to WHAV on cable television? If so, join WHAV in thanking the board, staff, and members of your local public access channel.
Open mic!
Every Monday night, the Open Mic Show brings interesting guests into your homes, presents your take on current events, and dabbles in little-known local history. I'm Tim Coco, your host, inviting you to join the chorus of community voices beginning at 6:30 Monday nights right here on WHAV. You may also watch this 50-year staple of democracy live at WHAV.tv and Haverhill Community Television Channel 22. The Open Mic Show was brought to you by Northern Essex Community College, the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council, and WHAV members. Remember, only local radio can bring you this talk opportunity, but only WHAV does.
Wave weather!
I'm